Good morning. Today we are going to be talking about intelligence. The first question that we need to be asking when talking about intelligence is what is intelligence? And does the phrase how smart someone is do the term justice? The Webster Dictionary defines intelligence as the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. Two of our developmental theorists, Jean Piaget and Robert Sternberg, have also chimed in on this conversation, with Piaget saying that intelligence is the thinking or behavior that is adaptive, while Sternberg refers to intelligence as the ability to think abstractly and solve problems efficiently. Next question that we need to be asking is intelligence inherent? Simply, this is the question that asks where does it come from? Early perspectives on intelligence refer to intelligence as an innate ability. Simply, it is genetically determined and fixed at conception. Meanwhile, the modern perspective on intelligence refers to it as not fixed, that it is changeable and is subject to environmental influence. The next question then would be, what makes someone intelligent? And the psychometric approach helps us with this. The psychometric approach refers to intelligence as a trait or set of traits that characterize some people to a greater extent than others. It is a research tradition in which we try to identify the one cognitive ability or the many cognitive abilities and to identify, measure, and describe those differences. The problem is, many of our experts could not agree to what to measure, our early experts. So Spearman developed a two-factor theory in order to describe intelligence. The G factor is the broad mental capacity that influences performance on cognitive ability measures. Simply, it is the cognitive ability that contributes to performance on many different tasks, and it is consistent across a range of tasks. The other part of the two-factor theory of Spearman is the S factor. It is the special abilities that is specific to a task. It is said that in childhood, the G factor is more prominent, but in adolescence, the S factor becomes more prominent as more of the G factor becomes automated, which frees up space for the development of S factor abilities. And this graph over here just shows that the S factors combined all make up the G factor. Another approach to intelligence is the fluid and crystallized intelligence. The fluid and crystallized intelligence refers to the type of problems that can be solved. Fluid intelligence refers to one use of mind to solve novel problems that can include analogies, unrelated pairs, recognized relationships, and geometric figures. These skills are not taught and represent raw information processing. Meanwhile, crystallized intelligence refers to the general information, word comprehension, numerical learning, which are all acquired intelligence that we have learned and are exposed to. So again, we go back to the question of what is intelligence? Intelligence is a hierarchy in which the top represents the general ability that is generalizable across many tasks. This middle section here represents the broad abilities. So these are the few and broad distinguishable abilities that can be distinguishable in factor analyses. And this can include the fluid intelligence, the crystallized intelligence, the memory capacity, and processing speed. And then we get to the specific task abilities that are only applicable to a single cognitive task. So how do we measure intelligence? So the Binet-Simon scale was developed by Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon to identify dull children who might need special instructions. So the French government basically commissioned these two psychologists to determine whether kids are progressing enough in the French schoolhouses. It includes a large battery of tasks necessary for classroom learning to include attention, perception, memory, reasoning, and verbal comprehension. So these tasks that comprise this battery have been taken from the feedback that they have gotten from French school teachers in order to determine if a child is progressing properly. And it is a discriminator. As the Binet-Simon scale evolved, it included the idea of a mental age, in which the level of age-graded problems that a child is able to solve. So they were able to compare children that were performing at their grade level and children that were not. For example, a 6-year-old item on the scale could be passed by most 6-year-old, but not by a but not by 5 years old. Only a few 5-year-old can pass 6-year-old items. So the Stanford Binet intelligence scale is the intelligence scale that most of us are probably familiar. This is where we derive the IQ, or the intelligence quotient. So the Stanford Binet scale is actually adapted from the Binet-Simon test by Lewis Terman of Stanford University for use for American children. So what is the IQ? So IQ is comparing a child's mental age with their chronological age. Remember that the mental age is the child's ability to perform age-specific tasks, while their chronological age is just their regular age. So we to calculate the IQ, we take one's mental age and divide that by their chronological age and multiply that by 100. And we compare this using test norms. So test norms are the standards of normal performance expressed as average test scores and the range of scores around the average. So currently, we don't usually use the mental age anymore. Instead, we just compare how an individual compares to their peers in their same age. And the average IQ is 100. So the IQ scores are organized in what is called a normal distribution, this bell-shaped curve, where most of the IQ scores are in the center around the 100 mark. The bell curve is divided using the standard deviation, which expresses the spread of scores above or below the averages. With, like I've said before, most of the scores clustered in the middle, and extremely high or extremely score lows being rare. 2/3 of the population would reside around one standard deviation above and below the average of 100, which would mean that 2/3 of the population would probably be in the 85 to 115 IQ score. So that is all what I have for you today. We will continue the discussion of intelligence at a later time. Thank you.